Condos as rental investments. If you're a multifamily owner, you have probably considered purchasing a property that is either a condo or part of a homeowners association. And there's quite a few things that you should be aware of before you dive into that as a property investment. And we're going to talk about those today. So first of all, let's define what a condo versus a homeowners association is. So a homeowners association is generally a collective maintenance, if you will, of properties that are each on their own parcel of land, and each owner, like in the case of townhomes, they own the roof, they own the ground, and they own to the center of the dividing walls. And usually the HOA is just responsible for maintaining common area. They might also maintain some of the exterior of the front of the building, in rare cases, maybe the roofs as well. But with a condo association, the association actually owns the ground that the real estate sits on, and the unit owner actually owns the airspace basically inside the unit, oftentimes owning to the centered line of the dividing wall between theirs and other units. So the condo association is generally always responsible for roofs. They actually own the land and all of the exterior of the property. And then each unit owner has a fractional ownership within the condo association as well. So the condo association is going to have a higher fee because obviously they're covering a whole lot more of the property, and they're going to generally be more restrictive. So that's an important distinction that you should be aware of as an investor. And then the second thing that you also want to be aware of is the fact that a lot of these types of communities, either HOA or condo association, have rules restricting rentals. And the reason they do that is twofold. Number one, if there's other owner occupants in the community, sometimes they view rentals negatively and they might vote to put a cap on how many renters are. But usually the more restricting thing is the fact that in order for an owner occupant to get a loan that's backed by a government agency, the condo association has to be warranted and meet certain conditions that are put forth by the Federal Housing Administration. And these are different organizations like FHA, VA, USDA, and offer a lot of financing for first-time homeowners who generally are purchasers in this type of community. So if the rental proportion goes over 50%, those associations are no longer eligible to have that type of financing in place, which is backed by the government, which means that the source of income for any owner occupants or the source of a loan for any owner occupant, it has to come like from private funding from a bank or other institutions where they're going to charge a higher interest rate and generally provide much worse terms. This then puts a downward effect on pricing, because if the majority of the owner occupants can't get traditional financing, or their financing is more expensive, or they have to bring a down payment, they're generally not going to be able to buy in that community, which has the effect of putting downward pressure on pricing for the people in that community that want to sell. So if you're an investor who purchases in that type of community, if it's non-warrantable, that means that the owner occupant and the people who might come in and buy that rental later on, they may not be as large of a pool, and they might not be able to pay as much as if the community does have approval for those government-backed loans. So that's an important distinction for you as an investor to understand, even if you're not utilizing those traditional owner-occupant type of financing. It will affect your resale value whether that community is approved or not approved. So also as an investor, it will affect whether or not oftentimes you can purchase or continue to purchase in a community, because one of the stipulations is that no single entity can own more than 10% of the community in order to be warrantable. And then you might have multiple entities, which could be one workaround, but no investors can own more than 50%, or else the community will lose its approval. So knowing what the percentage of rentals are in that community is important to you as an investor, because if you plan to purchase more than one, you're going to understand how close they are to their limit by asking how many rentals there currently are in proportion to their overall cap. So additionally, if you're an investor and you're looking to add a whole bunch of units within one community, let's say you find a community you really like, you're like, hey, this is great, I always rent really easily, the association's great, they take care of everything, I'm just going to keep buying every time there's a unit that comes up for sale. Well, that's awesome. Maybe you accumulate a whole bunch of rentals in one community, but then let's say you want to turn around and sell all those in a group to another investor. Well, therein comes another detail in financing that a lot of investors may not be aware of. So if you have a large portfolio of properties, whether that's an apartment complex, and in this case, if you had a whole group of townhomes in one community, if you have a balance and aggregate value of $2 million or more, oftentimes these types of investments can be eligible for multifamily loans, which are backed by HUD, the Federal Housing Administration, and these agencies, and Fannie and Freddie Mac, offer multifamily loans to investors. And the same thing with the owner-occupant investment loan. These loans are generally lower interest rate, they have a longer amortization, and they're in general just better loans for multifamily investing. So if you had a buyer who came along and said, hey, I want to get a Fannie Mae loan to purchase your group of 50 rentals in this community, well, that's great. But if you as an investor own less than 50% of that community, or even if you have anything less than 80%, really HUD is not going to like it, and you're probably not going to be eligible for Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac financing. Kind of the general rule of thumb in order to authorize these types of investments is that they want to see an investor own 80% or more of that community, which basically means they would be able to control the association if they own that many of the units. If there's somewhere between 50 and 80%, they might consider it, but offer not as good terms. Anything less than 50% ownership in a community by that one investor, they're going to look at that and say, absolutely not. It's a fractionized condo association or homeowners association. It is not eligible for traditional Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac financing. So this, as an investor, means you may not be able to get as much money when you sell your investments if the buyer is not able to get that better, more competitive financing, because as we all know, financing puts a big effect on pricing. If the financing's not as great, the investor is going to want to pay less for the investment. So as an investor, if you're accumulating a lot of rentals in a condo or homeowners association, keep that in mind in what percentage you're owning, because it could really be better to concentrate all of your rentals in one community rather than spreading it out to 3 or 4 different ones if you're doing that in order to accumulate that critical mass that then will give better terms for a future buyer when they come and purchase there. So I hope this video brought you some value and some clarity around owning condos as a rental property. And if so, please like, comment, and share the video. And if you're looking for investment real estate within Pennsylvania or Maryland, please reach out to us. We're always happy to help.